Hello, and welcome. This is Malik, your financial emancipator, and I wanted to talk a little bit about today with you guys about an issue that came up in the news, and it has a financial component, so I thought we would talk about it. And it's a little controversial, and I mentioned it on my Facebook, on my Instagram, like Insta story, and I got some feedback about it, so I wanted to talk about it. So there was an article that was released maybe sometime this week about there was a maybe last year during prom season there was a prom there was a whole bunch of, okay, let's go back a second. People are doing really extravagant things to send their children off to prom. I don't understand it. I went to prom in high school. I remember I didn't get a limo, but I remember people got limos, people took pictures, you got a dress. I mean, I thought that was the extent of it. But lately, and in the age of social media, going off to the prom has become this thing of how parents are doing this thing to try to outdo or make this going off to prom something more than just going off to prom. Because from everything I always understood, the whole point of it was the prom. Like, the prom was the moment. But now we've gotten into this thing of sending your kids off to prom. So there's really people renting luxury vehicles, people putting, having the whole neighborhood there, people just doing a lot more than what they used to do. Again, photo shoots in front of, the house for the going off to the prom. Like I said, renting these luxury vehicles, doing a really big thing for sending kids off to prom. Again, I don't understand it, because I went to prom, and again, I went to prom in 20 years ago, but I didn't realize prom had changed so much. But there was an article last year, or social media kind of got a buzz about a Philadelphia mom who had been sick. She'd suffered a stroke, she had cancer, all while her child was in high school. And so she decided that since she had recovered and she was better, when he was going off to prom, and he stayed in school and he really did well, until she wanted to reward him with a really elaborate send off to prom. And again, according to the news article, she spent an estimated $25,000 sending him off to prom in a Dubai style prom send-off, complete with real live camels, tons and tons of sand, all of this to send him off to prom with a theme of a Dubai theme, as if he had been to Dubai. And apparently the son had said that that's a place that he and his friends want to go, and so she did this work to reward her son for completing high school under the circumstances that he had completed them under. So even back then, when it became a social media fire and everyone was sharing it, there was a lot of controversy around it. People were like, oh my gosh, she spent $25,000. And this is in Philadelphia. If you're a person who's familiar with Philadelphia, and I used to live in Philadelphia, so knowing where they lived and what the neighborhood was, it struck me as odd that she had $25,000 to spend on this. And so the story kind of died down, but more recently the story came back into play because the mom has recently been indicted by federal prosecutors for fraud on Social Security disability, meaning she was indicted on a case basically saying that she defrauded the government by claiming Social Security benefits, but still working. It was always said that she owned a restaurant, and it said that she had claimed to be disabled and was collecting Social Security benefits monthly, but they had proof that she was still working. And so that part of it, and I had commented about going back to the extravagant prom. I had commented on that, and I got some feedback from one of my followers who said, I didn't understand the whole story, and that the $25,000 was donated. So there was a whole bunch of information or misinformation that probably went around about it, and that happens all the time with these kind of stories. But I think what the example of this is a very unique example, right? There's probably more to this story, because there always is. The fact that she spent $25,000, she's a business owner. She could have had $25,000, or, as someone tried to explain to me, maybe she had some of that stuff donated. But the reality is, the issue with her potential fraud that she's involved in really doesn't have anything to do with the $25,000 that she may or may not have spent on the prom send-off. It really has to do with the fact of whether or not she reported her income from her business that she's running as work and as income while she was still collecting benefits. So that's a very singular issue. That issue is one for which it's not an issue that you can really argue very much. Either you reported the income or you did not, and there isn't really much to argue. And unfortunately for that mom, this is probably going to be problematic for her if the feds are involved and they have indicted her on this case. That's probably going to be problematic for her, because there isn't really much wiggle room there. That being said, it brought up the other topic of of this doing so much, you know, whether or not the $25,000 was donated or was spent out of mom's own pocket, one of the things that I always often have concerns with folks is what the perception is, right? What are you trying to do when you're spending a lot of money on things, or wanting everyone else to see that a lot of money was spent? What is the goal? So sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. But is there a better way to spend money should always be the question. The young sir was going off to college. I have questions. Is his college education fully paid for? Are there people who were willing to donate, whether they were donating or not? Will those people be donating at the same rate to help him through college? If he's not going to college, are they donating to get him started in life? Have someone put some money aside for savings? His mom has faced illnesses. You know, unfortunately, anything can happen. Is there money set aside for him to do that? Because when you do something like as extra as this, even if you do it with donations, understand money is money. And when money is wasted, you can't get it back. And I'm not saying that you should not do the things to send off your child to prom if that's what you want to do. But in the instance where her health had been an issue in the past, she's a business owner, it appears that she's a single mom, it appears that this child's her sole responsibility, you would want to say that spending that much money, whether it was donated or money that she had herself, seems like a bad use of money. And someone will say, well, you can't judge her, you don't know her life, you don't know what it is. It's not a judgment upon her. It's a judgment upon the whole entire culture that encourages these kind of things. Renting a Bentley for your child to go off to prom is really something that doesn't make sense, because first of all, a Bentley is a car that your child cannot afford. And so you are pretending to send your child off in a Bentley, because if in fact you as the parent could afford a Bentley, you wouldn't need to rent it. You guys would own it, and the child will go off to prom in the Bentley. Right? It's when you're doing these things and you're making children, young people, chase richness and what they consider to be opulence and things at a young age, you confuse them, because it's not clear what's really important. So is it important to have the thing that looks like you have money, or is it important to have the money? Is it important to actually be wealthy or appear wealthy? Is it important is it more important to be in front of your house in Philadelphia appearing to go to Dubai, or is it more important to actually have the money saved up to go to Dubai? I mean, it's really a confusing message for young people. Social media confuses it, and it doesn't really help for them to understand the value of money and the value of being financially responsible. And so it is financially irresponsible to commit $25,000, again, of her own money or of donated money to this effort if there is not some other substantive commitments that have already been made towards this child's future. We're talking about graduating from high school. And so he's graduated from high school, and that's a great thing. But he has much more life ahead of him, to go forward with, so that he can prosper in life and grow. So there's more. So if he doesn't in fact have a savings account, if he does not in fact have a substantive nest egg for college, then what does the $25,000 experience of going off to prom do? It doesn't do anything of value for his future. And when we want to reward a child who's done hard work, why reward them with a false narrative or something that is a floor that can fall out from underneath him? Unfortunately, at this point, his mom is subject to potentially going to jail, or potentially having her resources taken. And at that point, having been sent off to prom in a Dubai style prom really won't be able to sustain him if that is the case. So it's one of those things where, again, I recognize you don't know all the details and you're just reading in the paper, and that's all I can do. I don't know these people personally. But I want to speak on a larger issue that comes up. It's not just this mom, it's many parents, it's many people who are fascinated with pretending to be rich, pretending to have, rather than actually doing what it takes to actually have. We don't want to encourage our children to floss for the gram and stunt for the social media We want to encourage them to be able to have it. And when you have it, you don't feel the need to stun about it. And so we want to really try to foster that within our young people, rather than this idea that all you need to do is pretend. It's like, so after the dust settles and prom is over, and the child doesn't have access to a Bentley, they don't have access to all of these lights and cameras, they don't have access to all of these things, what does that tell them? It's a false narrative. It's like playing pretend. And then the next week you're back telling your child you can't afford to give them $20 to go to the store. It really isn't. It's an incohesive message. It's confusing. And I just want to encourage people to stop confusing our young people with these type of financial messages, because it's what turns that young person into an adult who buys a house they can't afford just so other people can see, or drives a car that they can't afford, or drives a luxury car while they're living in subpar housing. Like, these are the kind of things that people do, and it's because of the foundation that's been set from when they're very young. You know, I encourage everyone to reward their young people in their lives for the achievements that they're making, but do it within a scale that matches your lifestyle and matches your life. And anything that you do to reward your children will be valued if you've taught them to value these things. But to just simply sit around and do this overdoing of things, and reaching beyond where you can afford to, it comes back to bite you later on in the end. And it doesn't teach young people anything but how to pretend. And if you want to pretend, there are amusement parks and books and things to pretend that cost far less than $25,000. You know, I wish that family the best. I'd hate to see any mother have to deal with a court case or anything as it relates to her resources. She's a business owner. She's apparently someone very special in the community. And so I hate to hear that she is dealing with that from the government, because, you know, that's unfortunate, and it could lead to a lot of things. It could lead to a really bad thing for her, and I hate to see that. But I also want to encourage other people to not try to match that, to be more concerned about making sure your children are set up for the future, set up for college, set up for the things post the prom. The prom should not be the highlight of your life. You go to the prom when you're 17, 18 years old. God willing, you're going to live much longer. And if you're going to do that, there'll be many more achievements for you that will be celebrated in your life. And you don't want the highlight of it to be that to one time when you went to prom and you were able to touch a Bentley and you never touch it again. You don't want the highlight of your life to be that at 18 years old. You don't want to encourage your kids to have, you know, look back at 18 as like, oh, that was the best I ever did, the most I ever touched, the most I was ever celebrated, you know, the best I felt in my life. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that. You can send me your comments, feedback, everything about that. You know, I'm going to talk about topics that are kind of controversial, because why not? They're here, and give my take on them and how they relate to financial emancipation and financial freedom. Because at the end of the day, that's my hope for everyone. It's the only way we're going to get free, is to be financially free, and doing things that are detrimental to our financial freedom. I'm going to speak on those things, and I'm going to speak on them specifically, and then I'm going to speak on them as they relate to just general ways in which people mismanage their finances and try to live lives that aren't consistent with the life that they actually are living, and how we can actually work harder to get there rather than pretending to be there. So thanks for joining me. We'll talk again soon.